When I first met Lucas, he wasn't like anyone I had ever dated. He had this calm, confident energy that drew people toward him, like he didn't need to try to impress anyone. We met at a weekend barbecue at my friend Jess's place. She'd mentioned a few of her co-workers would be there, but I hadn't expected to meet anyone who would actually matter. Yet, there he was leaning casually against the deck railing, laughing at something one of the guys said. He had this easy smile, the kind that felt both inviting and a little dangerous. When he finally came over to introduce himself, I remember thinking his voice sounded exactly like someone you could trust. That's how it started, simple, effortless, natural. Lucas worked in real estate marketing. He told me he traveled a lot, managing campaigns and meeting clients in different cities. I thought it sounded exciting, even a bit glamorous. He listened to me in a way few men ever had, asking real questions, remembering small details. After that barbecue, he texted me that night. Had a great time talking to you. You have the most honest eyes I've ever seen. That one message hooked me. Within a week, we were meeting for coffee, then dinners, then lazy Sundays at my apartment watching movies. It didn't take long before I started falling for him, even though it scared me how fast it was happening. The first few months were perfect. Lucas always made me feel wanted, sending good morning texts before I even woke up, bringing me takeout when he knew I had long work days, and surprising me with little notes he'd leave in my purse or a car. My friends adored him. My parents met him during my dad's birthday dinner, and even my mom, who's always suspicious of everyone, said, "He seems like a good one." I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Then, slowly, things started to shift. At first, it was small. He'd take a little longer to reply to messages, saying he was in meetings or driving. Then, he started canceling plans. "Work emergency," he'd say. I didn't think much of it after all. He'd warned me his job could get unpredictable. But something about his tone changed. His warmth dulled. The conversations got shorter. He stopped calling at night. The first real red flag came when he went out of town for a client meeting in Denver. He told me he'd be gone for 3 days. On the second night, I FaceTimed him just to say goodnight. He didn't answer. He texted later saying he was exhausted and had just gotten back to his hotel. The next day, I posted a story on Instagram, just a photo of my coffee and book, and a mutual friend, Ryan, replied saying, "Didn't I just see Lucas at a restaurant downtown?" I thought he was mistaken. I even laughed it off, replying, "He's in Denver for work." Ryan just sent a confused emoji. That stuck with me longer than it should have. The next few weeks were filled with those little inconsistencies, nothing big enough to prove anything, but just enough to make me feel uneasy. He'd tell me he was in meetings, but I'd hear faint chatter in the background, like he was at a bar. He'd say he was driving, but I'd catch the sound of laughter, a woman's laughter, faint but distinct. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was paranoid, that I shouldn't ruin something good with insecurity. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday. We hadn't seen each other in over a week because he said he had a major pitch coming up. But something inside me felt off, that gnawing gut feeling that doesn't go away no matter how much you rationalize it. He told me he was traveling again this time, a quick trip to Philadelphia. But his tone on the phone that morning was cold, distracted. I couldn't shake it. After work, I decided to drive by his place. I told myself it was stupid, that I just wanted to make sure he hadn't forgotten anything at my apartment from the last time he stayed over. But deep down, I was hoping to catch him lying. When I turned onto his street, my heart stopped. His car was there, parked right in front of his building. The same license plate, same dent in the bumper. For a moment, I convinced myself it didn't mean anything. Maybe his flight got delayed. Maybe he'd just gotten back early. I stood there for a few minutes, debating if I should knock. Finally, I did. No answer. The lights were off. I called him, but it went straight to voicemail. Something inside me cracked then. I walked around the side of his building toward the window that looked into his living room. The blinds weren't fully closed. And that's when I saw it. Lucas was sitting on the couch, and next to him was a girl, long brown hair, wearing one of his hoodies, her legs tucked under her like she belonged there. They were laughing, close, her hand resting on his thigh. My breath caught in my throat so violently I had to cover my mouth to keep from gasping. They looked happy, familiar, like they'd done this 1,000 times before. I couldn't move. I felt frozen. humiliated, like the air had been sucked out of me. I stayed just long enough to see him lean in and kiss her. That was it. That was all I needed. I turned and walked away, every step feeling heavier than the last. I got in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white, and started driving. I don't even remember most of that drive, just the tears blurring the lights of the road and the ache in my chest that felt unbearable. When I finally got home, I sat in the dark for hours. I didn't call anyone. I didn't scream. I just sat there staring at my phone. At 2 a.m., I texted him to words. I saw you. I waited. He never replied. The next morning, his number was disconnected. His social media gone. Every trace of him wiped clean as if he'd never existed. I called Jess, the friend who'd introduced us, but she said she hadn't heard from him in weeks. He told me he's going off the grid for a bit, she said casually, like it was normal. But who just disappears like that? For the next few weeks, I tried to rebuild myself. I told my friends I was fine. I told myself it was better this way, that I dodged a bullet. But in reality, I was broken, ghosted by the man I thought loved me, haunted by questions that would never be answered. Then, 3 weeks later, just when I'd stopped expecting closure, I got a message request on Instagram. The name was unfamiliar. Sarah, and the first line of her message made my blood run cold. Hey, this might sound crazy, but I think we need to talk about Lucas. At first I thought it was a joke or some kind of scam, because who just randomly messages you about your ex out of nowhere, especially the one who ghosted you after cheating? I stared at her message for almost 10 minutes before replying with a simple, cautious "what about him?" And then I waited, feeling that same pit of anxiety I'd been fighting for weeks start to crawl back up my chest. Within minutes she replied, sending paragraph after paragraph, and as I read, my stomach dropped further with every word. She said her name was Sarah, that she'd been dating Lucas for about 6 months, and that things had been perfect until he suddenly ghosted her 3 weeks ago. The same exact time he'd disappeared on me. She said she found my Instagram through a tagged post from one of his old coworkers, the same barbecue where we met. She'd seen a photo of Lucas and me together, dated just 2 months before he told her we were exclusive. That's when she started to suspect he wasn't who he said he was. She described everything: the early good morning texts, the surprise dinners, the trips he claimed were work-related. It was like reading my own story told by someone else. Same lines, same gestures, even the same "I have to travel" for a big pitch excuse. The more I read, the colder I felt. He had been living a double life, perfectly orchestrated, juggling 2 relationships right under our noses. I asked her to prove it, even though deep down I knew she wasn't lying. She sent screenshots, their texts, photos of them together at his apartment, even one of him in the exact same hoodie I'd bought him for Christmas. My head was spinning. It was impossible. But it wasn't. I could see the truth staring back at me in every image. I didn't know what to say. I just sat there, frozen, scrolling back and forth, my heart pounding. Then she said something that made everything 10 times worse. He told me he was moving to California for work. He said he wanted me to come with him eventually, but then he just vanished. No text, no call, nothing. My blood ran cold because he'd told me the same thing, word for word. He'd said he might relocate for a new opportunity and hinted I could join him someday too. It wasn't just cheating. It was like he was rehearsing a script, playing the same part into different lives. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh at the absurdity of it. Sarah and I kept talking for hours, piecing together our timelines like detectives. We discovered he'd been alternating weekends between us, telling one of us he was on a business trip while staying with the other. Every single lie fit perfectly into the gaps the other relationship created. It was calculated, methodical, terrifyingly precise. He had been lying to both of us from day one. What's worse, we realized we weren't even the only ones. Sarah mentioned that one night she saw a woman's name pop up on his phone, Lena, but he'd brushed it off as a colleague. Now she wasn't sure. There could have been more. We shared everything. Screenshots, receipts, dates, until it felt like we knew every move he'd made. At one point, Sarah said, "It's almost like he's doing this to multiple women. Not just us." I wanted to argue, but part of me knew she was right. Lucas didn't just cheat. He crafted identities, little versions of himself that adapted to whoever he was with. He was charming when he needed to be, serious when it suited him, romantic when it got him what he wanted. I started questioning everything. His stories, his job, even his name. I searched for him online again, this time more thoroughly. And that's when I realized something horrifying. His company didn't exist. The marketing firm he supposedly worked for had no record of anyone by his name. I went back to his old LinkedIn profile, but it had vanished. Just like his phone number and Instagram. It was as if he'd wiped himself clean and started over. I told Sarah, and she admitted she'd already tried to report him, but got nowhere. He used multiple last names on different accounts, enough to make him untraceable unless you really knew what to look for. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying everything. His smile, his fake apologies, his warmth that now felt like manipulation. I kept seeing him sitting on that couch with another woman, laughing like nothing mattered. The next morning, I woke up to another message from Sarah. It said, "You're not going to believe this, but I think I just found another girl." She attached a screenshot, a Facebook post from a woman named Chloe. The caption read, "To the man who disappeared after 3 perfect months. I hope you rot." And there, in the corner of the photo, was Lucas. Same smirk, same eyes, same person. 3 of us now. 3 stories that ended the same way, with silence and confusion. I felt sick. We tried messaging Chloe, but her account was private. Still, it confirmed what we suspected. He was running the same game over and over, moving from one woman to the next, ghosting each before they could compare notes. I asked Sarah why she reached out to me, and she said, "Because I needed to know I wasn't crazy." I understood that completely. For weeks, I thought I'd done something wrong, that maybe I'd pushed too hard or misunderstood something. But now I knew. He wasn't who he said he was, and none of it was real. But then came the twist I never expected. The next day, Sarah sent me another text. "Someone just messaged me pretending to be Lucas. Same number, different name. He said he wants to meet me to explain everything." She asked me what she should do, and my first instinct was to tell her to block him, to walk away. But deep down, I wanted answers too. I wanted to know who he really was, what he wanted, and why he did this. That's when we came up with a plan, one that would either expose the truth or drag us even deeper into his web. We decided she'd agree to meet him, but I'd be there too, hidden, watching, because if Lucas really was coming back, I needed to see his face one last time. And this time, I wouldn't let him disappear again. We picked a neutral spot, a small coffee shop downtown, the kind of place that's always busy enough to blend into the noise, but quiet enough to notice someone's body language. Sarah texted him and agreed to meet, pretending she still believed his excuses. He'd told her he wanted to clear the air, that everything had gotten out of control, that he never meant to hurt anyone. I could almost hear his voice through her screen those same manipulative phrases he used to feed me. The meeting was set for 3 p.m. on Saturday. I got there early, sitting near the back by the window with a hood pulled over my head, trying to look invisible. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Every time someone walked in, I tensed. But it wasn't him. Not yet. When Sarah finally arrived, she looked pale but determined. We made eye contact for the first time in person, and it was strange, like looking at a mirror version of myself, someone who'd lived the same nightmare. She sat at a table near the door, phone in hand, pretending to scroll. Then, 15 minutes later, he walked in. Lucas. I hadn't seen him since the night I caught him through the window. And now, seeing him again in broad daylight, I almost didn't recognize him. He looked the same calm smile, same easy confidence, but something in his eyes was different, colder, like he wasn't wearing a mask anymore. He spotted Sarah immediately, smiled, and walked over like nothing had happened. He hugged her, and I swear I felt my stomach twist. Watching him act so casual made me realize how dangerous he really was, how easily he could lie, charm, and deceive without hesitation. I watched every second, gripping my coffee cup so tightly my hand hurt. Sarah played it perfectly. She acted confused but gentle, asking him why he'd ghosted her. He gave the same rehearsed lines. "I had to leave suddenly. My phone broke. I didn't want to drag you into something messy." Then he added, "You were special to me. You still are." I almost laughed out loud. The audacity of it was unreal. She leaned forward, pretending to believe him, then said softly, So there wasn't anyone else? That's when his expression changed. For a fraction of a second, something flickered across his face, guilt, maybe, or fear. But then he smiled again and said, "Of course not." That's when I stepped forward. I don't even know what made me do it. It wasn't part of the plan, but I walked straight toward their table and said, "That's a lie." His head snapped up so fast it was almost comical. The color drained from his face when he saw me. "Hi, Lucas," I said, keeping my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, with a forced smirk, he muttered, "I think you've got the wrong person." I almost laughed. "Wrong person? You're seriously going to pretend you don't know me?" Sarah stood up beside me, glaring at him. People were starting to stare, the tension thick enough to choke on. Lucas looked around, clearly realizing he couldn't control the situation. "We need to talk somewhere private," he said, but neither of us moved. I folded my arms and said, "No, you're going to explain right here." He glanced toward the exit, like he was calculating whether to run. For a second, I thought he might actually bolt. But then he sighed and said quietly, "It's complicated." "That's all," he said. "Complicated?" I snapped. "You were dating us at the same time, lying to both of us, ghosting us like we didn't exist. What's complicated about that?" Sarah's voice trembled as she added, "And what about Chloe? Or however many others there are." That got his attention. His jaw tightened, and I knew we'd hit a nerve. He whispered, "You don't know what you're talking about," and started to leave, but I grabbed his arm. "You're not walking away again." He froze, looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something real in his expression, not guilt, not regret, but panic. Then, under his breath, he said something that chilled me. "You shouldn't have found each other." I frowned. What's that supposed to mean? But he didn't answer. He pulled free and left, disappearing into the crowd outside before we could react. We followed him out, but by the time we reached the street, he was gone, vanished. Just like before, it felt like déjà vu. Except now it wasn't heartbreak, I felt it was fear. Because the way he'd said it, the way his eyes darted around like he was being watched, didn't sound like a man caught cheating. It sounded like someone hiding something much darker. Sarah was shaking, clutching her phone. "We should have recorded it," she whispered. I nodded, still staring down the street where he'd disappeared. Something wasn't right. That night, Sarah and I met again at my apartment, going over everything we knew. We searched his old messages, his old photos, anything that could give us a clue. And that's when she found something odd. In one of his messages, he'd sent her a picture of his office. It looked ordinary, just a sleek desk, a laptop, a shelf with books, but in the reflection of the window, there was a glimpse of something behind him. A logo, a company name we didn't recognize. Aurelius Ventures. We Googled it. Nothing. No website. No business listing. It didn't exist. But when we searched his supposed email domain, it showed up in connection with a few classified ads, recruitment listings that looked fake, all leading to deactivated pages. I felt my pulse race. Who was this man really? He wasn't just a liar, he'd built an entire fake life, layer upon layer. Sarah and I spent the next few hours digging deeper. And the more we found, the stranger it got. His clients didn't exist. His addresses were temporary rentals. Even the car he drove was registered to a company, not him. It was like he didn't actually exist on paper. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that moment in the cafe when he said, "You shouldn't have found each other." It played over and over like a warning. The next morning, Sarah called me, her voice trembling. "You need to see this," she said. She'd gotten another message, this time from an unknown number. It said, "Stop digging. You don't understand who you're dealing with." For a few seconds, I couldn't even breathe. I stared at the message on Sarah's phone and felt a chill crawl up my spine. It didn't sound like Lucas. At least not the version we knew. The tone was too sharp, too final, like someone issuing an order rather than a warning. Sarah was pale, her hands shaking as she held her phone out to me. "Do you think it's him?" she whispered, but I didn't know what to say. It had to be. Who else would know what we were doing? We hadn't told anyone, hadn't posted a thing, hadn't even spoken about it over normal calls in case he somehow still had access to our numbers. "Block it," I said, but she didn't. Instead, she texted back, "Who is this?" No reply. just that silence that feels heavier than words. Hours passed, and we tried to convince ourselves it was just another layer of his manipulation, some twisted way to scare us off. But the pit in my stomach wouldn't go away. That night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to a notification on my phone. A new message request from a blank account with no profile picture. It said, "I told you to stop." My heart was pounding so loud I thought it would wake the neighbors. I didn't reply. I just took a screenshot and sent it to Sarah, who responded immediately. I got the same one. We didn't sleep after that. We stayed up all night messaging each other, trying to make sense of what was happening. Maybe he'd set up fake numbers or accounts to scare us. Maybe he was just a coward who couldn't stand being exposed. But something about it didn't feel like just him anymore. The messages were too calculated, the timing too precise. I decided we needed to go to the police. It sounded dramatic, but it wasn't anymore just about cheating, it was about safety. The next morning, we went to the local precinct with every screenshot, photo, and conversation we had. The officer on duty listened carefully but didn't look very optimistic. He said unless there was a direct threat or proof of stalking, there wasn't much they could do. "He's probably just a con artist," he said with a shrug. "Happens more often than you'd think." We left feeling even worse, like we were screaming into a void no one cared to hear. Over the next few days, we tried to move on again. I went back to work, avoided social media, blocked unknown numbers, but the anxiety stayed. Then one afternoon, Sarah called me, her voice shaking. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "I saw him." My blood ran cold. She told me she'd been getting groceries when she saw him in the parking lot, standing by a black SUV with tinted windows. He wasn't alone. There was another man with him, older, dressed in a dark suit. They were talking quietly, but when Lucas turned and saw her, he froze. He didn't wave, didn't smile, he just stared. Then he got in the car and drove off. She tried to follow, but they were gone in seconds. I didn't know whether to believe it or not. It sounded surreal, but I knew Sarah wouldn't make that up. That night, I found myself scrolling through old photos again, looking for any clue, anything we might have missed. That's when I noticed something strange. In several photos taken months apart, Lucas was wearing the same watch. I remembered asking him about it once. He said it was a gift from work, but zooming in now, I realized there was a tiny symbol engraved on the face. The same logo we'd seen in the reflection in his office photo, the one from Aurelius Ventures. My pulse quickened. This wasn't just about cheating anymore. This was something else. I called Sarah immediately and told her. We started searching online again, this time focusing on that symbol. After hours of digging, we finally found something, a mention of it in an archive news article about an investment firm accused of running an identity theft scheme 5 years ago. The firm's name? Aurelius Ventures. It was shut down after an investigation, but no one was ever arrested. The article mentioned several people of interest, but all the names were aliases. No photos, no confirmation of who ran it. We sat there in stunned silence, both of us realizing the same thing. Lucas might not have just been playing women, he could have been using us, using our identities, our accounts, maybe even our personal data. All those times he'd asked for little things that seemed harmless, our birthdays, addresses, even our parents' names. It suddenly made sense. He wasn't just cheating, he was building profiles. I felt sick to my stomach. "We need to check our bank accounts," I said, and Sarah immediately agreed. We both did, and sure enough, there were small, unfamiliar transactions in both our accounts, tiny amounts, random vendors, nothing obvious but enough to send chills through us. He'd been testing the waters, making sure he could access them without triggering alerts. We contacted the bank, froze our cards, filed reports. It felt like we were unraveling something far bigger than either of us had imagined. That night, I got home and checked my front door 3 times before locking it. I kept the lights on, sitting by the window like some paranoid movie character. I didn't care. My phone buzzed once around midnight. A new message. Just one line. "You should have left it alone." My heart dropped. It wasn't from a number I recognized. I called Sarah immediately, but she didn't answer. I tried again. Still nothing. Panic set in. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to her apartment. When I got there, her car was in the driveway, lights off. I banged on her door. No answer. I shouted her name until the neighbor came out, irritated, saying he'd seen her leave about an hour earlier with a man. He described him: tall, dark hair, gray hoodie. Lucas. I froze on the porch, the neighbor's words echoing in my head until they didn't sound like words anymore, just noise. My pulse was pounding so hard I couldn't even think. Lucas. He'd been here. He'd seen us digging. Maybe he'd been watching the whole time, waiting for us to get too close. I ran to my car, hands trembling as I dialed Sarah again. Straight to voicemail. My mind spun through every possible scenario. Maybe she went with him willingly. Maybe she didn't know who she was meeting. Maybe she thought she was confronting him. But the image of her leaving with him, after everything we knew, made my stomach twist in dread. I didn't even know where to start looking. His apartment was empty. His job was fake. His numbers were disconnected. But I still had one thread left: the black SUV she'd seen him driving. I drove to the grocery store where she'd spotted him earlier and parked in the same place she described. It was past midnight, the lot empty except for a few trucks. My headlights caught a security camera near the entrance, and I realized if anyone could help, it was the guy inside. I walked in, trying to steady my breathing. The night clerk looked half asleep, but when I told him my friend might have been abducted and showed him Sarah's photo, he perked up immediately. "Yeah," he said slowly. "I saw her earlier tonight. She came in alone, bought a drink, and left. About an hour ago, a car pulled up right after." My heart sank. "Do you have footage?" He hesitated, glancing round. "We're not supposed to show it. But yeah, hold on." He led me to a back office and pulled up the cameras. There she was, Sarah, walking out with her phone in hand, checking something. A car rolled into frame seconds later. Black SUV, tinted windows. The passenger door opened, and I saw a figure step out. Lucas. Even through the grainy footage, there was no mistaking him. He said something to her. She froze, then nodded and got into the car. The SUV drove off. The clerk gave me a look like he didn't want to know anymore. I snapped a photo of the screen, thanked him, and left. I drove to the police station again, shaking the whole time. The same officer from before was on duty, and when he saw my face, he didn't even ask what was wrong. I showed him the footage. Photo explained everything again, from the fake company to the messages to the missing person. This time, he didn't dismiss me. Within an hour, there were reports filed, calls made, and an alert issued for Sarah and the vehicle. But by dawn, there was still nothing. I sat in the station lobby, exhausted, terrified, every second feeling heavier than the last. Then my phone buzzed. A new message from Sarah's number. "I'm fine. Please stop looking for me." For a moment, relief surged through me until I noticed something off. Sarah always used punctuation, always signed messages with an emoji or something casual. This one was cold, robotic, just like the ones Lucas used to send. I showed it to the officer. He frowned and said they'd traced the signal. The next few days blurred together. I barely ate, barely slept. The police confirmed the text came from a prepaid phone and traceable. They searched nearby towns, motels. Nothing. It was like they'd vanished. Then, a week later, I got an email. No sender listed, no subject, just a link in one sentence. "You wanted the truth. I shouldn't have clicked it, but I did." It opened a video. Grainy, low light, maybe a hidden camera. I could see Sarah sitting at a table in what looked like a hotel room. Across from her, Lucas. He was talking, calm, almost businesslike, while she stared down at the table, frozen. I turned up the volume. His voice came through clearly. "You think this is about you, don't you? It's not. It's about control. About who deserves to know the truth." Sarah whispered something I couldn't hear. Lucas leaned forward, smiling faintly. "You should have stayed quiet." Then the screen went black. I sat there shaking, staring at the reflection of my own face on the laptop. The file had no metadata, no origin. I sent it to the detective immediately, and they began investigating again. This time calling in federal agents because the case crossed state lines. Days later, they found the SUV abandoned in a remote area outside the city. Inside were two phones, both wiped clean, and a watch, the same one Lucas always wore. No sign of them. The story made local news for a few days, labeled suspicious disappearance under investigation. I thought that was it, but 2 months later, I got another message. This time from a woman named Mia. She said she'd been dating someone named Ethan. who vanished after she discovered he'd been cheating on her. Her story matched mine almost word for word, down to the same phrases, the same fake company name. I sent her everything: screenshots, emails, photos. She went silent for a few hours, then texted me again. "He told me about you," she wrote. "He said you'd come looking. He said if I ever wanted to disappear, I should follow his instructions." I felt ice in my veins. "Where are you?" I typed, but she didn't answer. The account disappeared the next day. I changed my number, deleted my social media, and moved to another city within a month. Sometimes, though, I still get those messages. Different numbers, always the same line. "You should have left it alone." Every time, I block them, but they keep coming. And sometimes, when I walk home late, I swear I see a figure in a gray hoodie standing just far enough away to make me doubt what I'm seeing. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's guilt. But sometimes, when my phone buzzes at night, I don't even check anymore, because deep down, I already know who it is. Lucas, or whatever his name really was, never left. And maybe neither did Sarah.